Good morning, everybody. Meteorologist Griffin Hardy here at the WDHN studios in Dothan, Alabama, still tracking what will be a historic Hurricane Michael. It's still a Category 4 storm with winds of 145 miles per hour surrounding the eye there. The sun is just now rising over top of the southern states, and we're getting visible imagery coming in. And just in the past couple of minutes, the pressure has now been reported to 931 millibars. It's still intensifying after all this time, and I do think it has a very small chance of possibly becoming a Category 5 storm before making landfall. This is going to be a storm that will be told for generations to come, because this is going to be bringing devastating impacts to the Florida Panhandle, places like Panama City and Apalachicola. Now, luckily, we are not immediately on the coastline, so the storm will have time to weaken a little bit before it actually moves inland up into southeast Alabama and southwestern Georgia. Here's the latest NEXRAD reflectivity. We've got the eye of the storm that's now about 70 miles to the southwest of Panama City, and that's still where we're likely going to run into landfall. It's starting to make that slow projected turn to the right up to the northeast, and luckily the farther east it is from Dothan, the less of the impacts that we'll likely see, because if we're in the left hand side of the storm, which we likely will be, we'll have less in the way of the tornado threat and possibly less in the way of the flash flooding threat, because winds will be primarily out of the northeast as opposed to out of the south. Looking farther north across portions of the Wiregrass, we've got light to moderate rain expanding from the Florida-Alabama state line all the way up into parts of Pike County, all the way up to Troy and parts of Eufaula there, up into Barber County as well. The heavy rain extends all the way from the coastline well up into southeastern Alabama, and that rain is going to be continuing for the rest of the day today. Wind speeds are increasing. According to the latest NEXRAD data, we've got wind speeds on the order of about 35 miles per hour, which is just shy of tropical storm force winds. The winds, in order to be tropical storm force, have to be 39 miles per hour or greater, and I really think they're only going to keep increasing as Michael continues to move farther inland. Here's the satellite radar picture, again about 70 miles to the south-southwest of Panama City. This is going to be an amazing storm in regards to the damage that this is likely going to cause, because those winds are easily enough to knock over site-built structures with foundations. This is basically the same thing as a very powerful tornado coming ashore in portions of the Florida Panhandle, particularly near Panama City, which, by the way, has never had even a Category 4 storm make landfall in recorded history. Ever since 1851, since we've been keeping weather records, they've never had a Category 4 make landfall anywhere in the Florida Panhandle, and this could be a Category 5 before it even does so. Looking a little bit closer on the satellite and radar picture, again, you see that rain expanding up into southeastern Alabama. This rain is going to be prevailing for the rest of the day today, and with that, we'll have that threat for localized flash flooding. The winds, of course, are going to be increasing as the day goes on. By around 2:15 p.m., we're running into tropical storm force winds, likely some hurricane force wind gusts closer to the Florida-Alabama state line farther south. And the farther south you live and the closer to the coastline that you live, the stronger those wind gusts are going to be. But luckily, when the hurricane moves inland, it's a bit like taking your foot off the gas pedal. And even though the storm's still spinning, it loses its heat source that it needs as the ocean. So once it moves inland, it's going to steadily weaken. But nonetheless, winds are going to still be very powerful here later tonight and into the rest of the day today. So 7:30 p.m., here are those hurricane force wind gusts showing up in parts of Dothan and Abbeville and Ozark. This is going to be easily enough to knock down trees and power lines, so we could be without power for an extended period of time. Be prepared to be without power for a couple of days, because it's going to take a while to get the grid back in order. 10:30 p.m., those winds still at tropical storm force across most of the Wiregrass, extending over into southwestern Georgia. Then we fast forward to 2:30 a.m. Winds still kicking for the most part, but the storm itself has made its way up into south central Georgia, where it will be continuing to weaken as it moves farther to the northeast. So the rainfall amounts still on the order of about 4 to 6 inches across most of the Wiregrass, extending from the coast all the way up into southwestern Georgia. You see those rainfall amounts anywhere from close to 5 inches here in Dothan and as high as close to 7.5 inches estimated by our forecast model. We could see locally higher amounts, but the most important thing to remember, just try not to go out driving in this, because a lot of weather-related fatalities do happen on the roadways. So definitely want to just Turn around, don't drown if you do get caught in the roadways, but nonetheless, this could be a very impactful storm in the form of flash flooding, and we also have a tornado watch in effect for our counties in southwestern Georgia and southern Florida, because we'll have that threat for spin-up tornadoes as these outer feeder bands come ashore on the eastern side of the low. Now, the majority of us are going to be on the left-hand side of the circulation, where the tornado threat's not going to be as high. It's non-zero, but it's not going to be as high. The main problem we'll run into, those straight-line wind gusts and the flash flooding. So the wind speeds right now, at least according to the latest observations, are still haven't really increased all that much. The strongest winds that have been measured now are up to 20 miles per hour in Mariana, but this is just the lightest that they will be for the rest of the day today. They're going to progressively go up. Here's the Storm Prediction Center tornado probabilities for today. On the order of 5% for most of south central Georgia, extending all the way up into Macon. So this is going to be an impactful storm, not just for the coastline, but extending well up into the Carolinas as the jet stream picks up the storm and lifts it and shoots it off to the northeast up into the Carolinas. And the Storm Prediction Center's convective outlook certainly outlining that. Our counties are kind of on the fringe, so really, the spin-up tornado threat's not going to be as substantial here, but we're going to be talking about mainly the damaging wind gusts, which are certainly going to be lasting most of the night tonight, and that will be prompting a lot of power lines to go down. And with that, we'll likely have to remind you that if you're in a mobile home, you want to find your local shelter if you haven't done so already, and keep your phone charged. While you've still got power, keep charging your phone, because more than likely if we do have warnings that are going to be issued, you're not going to be able to see them on television. So tune in to the WDHN News app and the WDHN Weather app. We'll continue to provide warnings as they become available. And if you can help it, just don't drive from now until the rest of the evening, until the storm passes, because we're already starting to see some slick roadways out there. You saw that from our reporters earlier in this newscast around Highway 231. The roads were already looking pretty slick there. And if you haven't done so already, have your flashlight handy and have food and water, because we could be without power for a couple of days because of these very damaging wind gusts. So all that being said, here's your 7-day forecast. Once Michael finally exits the region by Thursday night, a cold front will come in and replace it. And with that, we'll have notably cooler temperatures. So thankfully, if we do go without power for an extended period of time, it's not going to be in the middle of the summertime where we have to worry about not having air conditioning. We're going to be a little bit cooler. Highs will be up into the upper 70s and lows will be dropping down to the mid and upper 50s. So we just got to get past this storm and the weather does look a little bit fairer. Oscar, back over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Griffin. And if you're just now tuning in, we are entering into, or already have, I should say, our 5th hour of wall-to-wall coverage, and we're going to continue to remain with you throughout the remainder of this storm. And I've been told that Nathaniel, Scott, and Mandy are all outside, and I think that they're ready. We're going to go back out to them to check the current outdoor conditions.
Hey guys, yeah, we're outside in our own backyard here in Webb, Alabama, and I'm joined with Nathaniel Rodriguez and our chief meteorologist, Scott Roberts, and we're going to get to them in just a minute, but I want to show you the current conditions outside right now here in Webb, Alabama, and you can see how we pointed out to our parking lot. Still some rain just steadily coming, light to moderate rain. The wind has picked up a little bit. Now, if you look at the trees, though, they're not bending over just yet, but there's a little bit of gusts that'll bend these smaller trees. So that's kind of an idea, though, for your cars. If you're put right now in your house or your apartments, you might want to move your car away from any trees or anything like that so tree limbs don't fall down or those trees don't come down on them as well before things get a little crazy. Right now, it's still kind of quiet out here. Like I said, winds is picking up. You can see a little bit of water in our parking lot beginning to collect as well, but things are only going to slowly start to deteriorate as we go throughout our morning. And like I said, I'm joined now with Nathaniel Rodriguez. He's our digital content producer, and also he's a part of the WDHN Storm team. And you just got here recently. Where did you come from?
I just came back from my home at Enterprise. This is kind of
road conditions there?
Road conditions. So right now things are pretty safe to travel, especially along Highway 84. Visibility is still pretty good. The rain's not coming down too hard as of right now. The wind is not pushing too much, so you shouldn't be at too much of a risk of losing control of any vehicles. Debris, not that much. I will say, pools of water are starting to form inside cities on those smaller roads with those banks along the sides, the curbs.
Right.
So watch out for those as you're driving, as well as animals. I saw some animals trying to move about, trying to find a place to hide from the storm in.
Right.
So also keep an eye out for those kinds of things, because you don't want to add to the risk factor of hitting an animal, lose control of your vehicle in these wet road conditions, and then possibly ending up stranded in a ditch.
Right, that's a good point that you brought up, some new points that you brought up. And of course, I know you just said that some of our reporters were on 231 South and they had a little bit slicker roadways there. So again, the conditions just going to continue to deteriorate throughout the morning. Now we're going to go over to Chief Meteorologist Scott Roberts, and he just now joined us because he's going to be here all night into the morning hours.
Yeah, so I'm home. I am home.
He is home for the day, but what are your thoughts as the chief meteorologist? And you've been seeing this thing just intensify rapidly throughout the morning, and it looks like, you know, the pressure is continuing to drop.
Yeah, as far as that, I mean, it's not a huge surprise to us by any stretch of the imagination that this storm became stronger. We were watching it last night that, yeah, it did have that possibility. And one thing that's going to help us in the short term is as that storm gets a little bit closer to shore, the window for its strengthening significantly more is going to be closing a bit. So we probably won't see a storm much stronger than what we're dealing with now. I think the only thing that would probably cause it to strengthen further rapidly before making landfall right now is if that eye wall were to contract just a bit before hitting land. And basically what that will do is it's going to treat, the storm's going to act like a figure skater, where they bring in their arms and they spin really fast at the end. That does happen with storms occasionally, oftentimes smaller storms than what we're dealing with, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities for us. But even with that said, I don't anticipate it being significantly stronger than what we're dealing with. And then the next thing with that is, how quickly does it weaken for us once it's on shore? That's going to be the big thing that we're watching. It is picking up a little bit breezy. Not quite the tropical storm force just yet, but we're going to be getting there as we head into the later morning, closer to lunchtime, and going beyond that. That's when we will really start to see those conditions deteriorate, especially from south to north. South first, then further north as we go later on. So we have the next advisory coming out in just a little less than an hour at 10 o'clock. We'll be bringing that to you, and we'll see what kind of changes happen from it with that pressure dropping.
Yeah, I said that this is a catastrophic storm. I mean, it just kind of evolved from tropical depression to a major event and just continues to get stronger. But for you, as a chief, what would you say to people, or what are some of the greatest concerns that people should be aware of for today?
I think the greatest concern is getting to that safe place. If you right now, if you don't feel safe where you are, if you don't feel safe on a normal day with afternoon thunderstorms coming through, you might want to consider getting to a sturdier structure right now. There's still time to go while conditions still now, as they are, relatively calm compared to where they will be. So that's going to be the biggest thing for people. And if you don't feel safe, do what you need to do to feel safe and stay there for the duration of the storm.
That's right, and there you heard it from our chief, and of course we're going to be with you all day long, and we'll be here for you all through the night, all through the morning hours as well. So I'm going to throw it back to you there in the studio.
I have a very serious question for you, Mandy, if you can hear me. Oscar wants to know, how is it that you're outside and remaining dry?
Remaining dry. Well, we have this cover. If you look up, we have a cover, so I'm not actually in the rain. I do need an umbrella or a rain jacket. I guess a rain jacket out here. Scott, our camera guy back there, is telling me that I need the rain jacket so we can actually go out into the rain and show you a little bit. When it gets a little bit heavier, when the rain gets a little bit heavier and that wind starts to pick up, we'll go ahead and go out there and kind of show you some of the conditions, but also stay safe, because we're here in our own backyard, right out in the back door of our station. So of course we're keeping it safe, but also trying to show you what the current conditions are. And of course I'll throw on a rain jacket later and show you a little bit when that wind picks up and when the rain gets a little bit heavier also.
We're just joking around, trying to incorporate some humor here. So, all right, we've got a couple of other updates. I just got an update that GW Long School, elementary and high school, which is in Dale County and Skipperville, they have decided to be out of school tomorrow as well as today. So thank you for that update. And I don't know about all of Dale County schools, but GW Long for sure in Skipperville is going to remain closed tomorrow as well.
In fact, they will be closed the next 3 days.
Yes, because it's going to be the weekend.
Yes, indeed. Well, no, when you tell them it's going to be closed the next 3 days, they get excited, and you tell them, wait a minute, oh, it's a weekend. That doesn't count.
I like it. All right, so we have a couple of other questions, and I have to apologize that I'm reading off of my phone here, but we had another question, and
one thing too also.
Yeah, while I'm getting to this question, thank you.
You know, in the old days, even before I was around, say back in the 20s, the one I'm thinking about is the Miami hurricane in 1926. It really wasn't forecast very well. It was a Cat 4 that made landfall in downtown Miami. But people didn't understand them back then, and the eye came through, and people made the mistake of, well, I'm glad that's over with. And they went outside and the sun was out and all that, and they didn't understand, it's just a brief period. Here comes the winds from the opposite direction in a few minutes. And I was looking at Griffin into your wind forecast. I was noticing as it went across South Georgia, we were showing winds up here around 40, 50 miles an hour, maybe higher. But that little area down in southwestern Georgia, it was like 8 miles an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
And because that's where what's left of the eye is going to be, and there's going to be a brief period that the winds will die down.
That's true, yes. And where the eye is centered, that's of course the calmest part of the storm, which, like you talked about, can be deceiving. People are like, oh, it's over.
Especially along the coast, it could be a big danger, but inland, pretty much, that's not that big a problem. The other thing, too, people talk about, like you mentioned, it was calm in the eye, but if you're out in the middle of the ocean and the eye comes over you, the seas are not calm. They're extremely rough because the winds are coming from all directions at that point. So that's a little misleading, but if you look up in the sky, it's a nice break, but you got to deal with the winds coming from the other direction.
All right, I've been told we need to go to break here. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. Stay with us.